Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Well, it appears that the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARROW, is becoming a second Project Blue Book. That's what it seems like. I've been doing some thinking about this, and based on some of the commentary made by other people in the UFO community, I believe that is the case. It is absolutely useless. It's not going to get us anywhere. I know I stated this in the previous show, but today I want to talk about, first I want to bring up some things that Richard Dolan said this past week on his show, Richard Dolan Intelligent Disclosure on YouTube. He made some comments. He had an episode there. The episode was called Questionable Findings, ARROW's Senate Testimony. And he talked about some of the cases that ARROW discussed during that they resolved, allegedly. And really, looking at those cases and looking at their findings, there's no real resolution there. I mean, they might be right, but they're presenting it as if these cases are solved. These UAP incidents, and I don't think that they are. And I think what you're seeing here is basically the same kind of stuff that we already saw. If you look in the historical records with regard to Project Blue Book and how they handled things, basically what they did, for the most part, Project Blue Book was look at different cases and then provide some sort of an explanation, a prosaic explanation that ends the argument as far as they were concerned. And that's the same thing I think is happening with ARROW. And I think some other things that Richard Dolan said during that episode were really interesting, and I think he's right. Basically, we're never going to get disclosure voluntarily from the Pentagon. We're just not. This is what he said. I wrote these comments down, and I'll leave the link for his show that I'm talking about here, so you can check it out for yourself. But he says, "I don't believe there will ever be a voluntary disclosure of the reality of this UAP phenomenon. I just don't think it's going to happen without a lot of pressure." And he also said, I imagine there will not be a disclosure so much as an eventual confirmation. And I think that's an interesting concept right there, because I think he might be onto something with that too, that there might not be a disclosure outside of a confirmation. I think that's what we might get. We won't get disclosure from them, but we'll get some kind of a confirmation. And he goes on to say this. He says, the authorities will confirm the reality of this phenomenon only after the entire world already knows, when it truly seems pointless to keep hiding that fact. Yes, I totally agree with that statement. I think that's where this is heading, because the Pentagon just keeps doubling down, quadrupling down, octupling down. I mean, they just keep saying the same thing over and over again. I just talked recently. I did a show last month. There was an official. There was a Air Force official who went in front of a podium in front of reporters and said that they have no evidence. The government has no evidence of extraterrestrials or UFOs. Nothing to share. Nothing whatsoever. And then just recently, the House hearing that happened not this week, but the prior week, the week before the Senate hearing on UAP with the ARROW director, John Kozlowski, the week before in the House committee hearing, where Lou Elizondo and Tim Gallaudet, among others, were there, Michael Schellenberger. When they were talking about that, they were talking about that there's a cover-up, that there's, just like similar to what David Grush did, right? The same kind of thing, where there's a cover-up, that there is something to this phenomenon, and they're hiding the truth from Congress. And then the very next day, the Pentagon comes out afterward and says, nope, there's nothing to see here. So I'm going to pull up this article here this was from Fox News Digital last week, and the headline reads, "Pentagon says there's no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology, beings, or activities." So again, I mean, they're just even though there's people, and this is the day after that hearing, even though there's people testifying under oath that there's a cover-up, there's still they're doubling down, quadrupling down, octupling down. They just keep going down the same thing over and over again, because they're not going to they have no intentions of willingly coming forward and giving us the truth. And this article here says it all. I mean, this is the day after this hearing where Lou Elizondo and Tim Gallaudet, among others, testified. It says here, the Pentagon said Thursday it has not discovered any verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology, despite a former Pentagon official telling Congress Wednesday that evidence exists that we are not alone in the cosmos. Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh told reporters during a press briefing the Department of Defense delivered its fiscal year 2024 annual report on unidentified anomalous phenomena to Congress, which shows the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office received over 1,600 UAP reports since the department was established in July 2022. Of the 1,600 reports, 757 came to AARO over the past year, and the office has resolved hundreds of cases identifying the UAPs as objects like balloons, birds, drones, satellites, and aircraft. Singe also said over 900 of the reports lacked sufficient data for analysis, though those cases remain an active archive and can be reopened if additional information emerges to support its analysis. And then it goes on, she went on to say, I want to emphasize that only a very small percentage of reports to AARO are potentially anomalous, but these are the cases that require significant time, resources, and focus, Singe said. It is also important to underscore that, to date, the department has discovered no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology. None of the cases resolved by AARO have pointed to advanced capabilities or breakthrough technologies either. So there you go. This is the kind of things that the Pentagon's saying the day after that hearing in the House. And also she said, I'm not aware of any remains that the department has or, as you know, any signs of extraterrestrial beings or activity or technology. And that was in response to a question regarding aliens in storage. And then for some reason they have a picture here on this Fox News Digital article, a picture that I actually had submitted to them earlier this year that appeared in a different article on the Vegas aliens. And they have this image here of the Vegas alien head appearing above the fence. And it says here, a head moves into the right corner of a video taken the same night a streaking light lit up the skies of Las Vegas. I'm glad that they included that picture there, even though it has nothing to do with this article whatsoever. But in a way, it does. In a way, it really does when you really, really think about it. But I don't know why they included it there, because there's no discussion of the Vegas case whatsoever in the article. But they do have the picture of the alien face. And I thought it's interesting that Fox did that. They just put that picture in there because the Pentagon's telling you that they have no evidence. Even though I submitted this letter to them on June 11th, they're completely aware of this. The Pentagon is completely, absolutely aware of the kind of things that Scott Roeder has been talking about and the things that I've been reporting about on my show. And somebody at Fox News decided to throw that in there as, hey, look at this. What about this? And then also the article goes on to say, Singe reiterated that the department has not discovered any verified evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology. Lou Elizondo, the former head of the Defense Department's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, was tasked with investigating UAP. On Wednesday, he and other witnesses testified before the House Oversight Committee. And this is what Elizondo said. He says, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involving the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I have personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. So I'll leave the link for this article so you can check out the entire thing. But I guess the point is that the day after that hearing, the day after the House hearing, this is the kind of things that the Pentagon's coming out and stating. That's because they have no intention of ever voluntarily telling us the truth. It's just not going to happen. And I believe that Richard Dolan is absolutely correct. Again, he says, I imagine there will not be a disclosure so much as an eventual confirmation. And I think that's probably what our best hope is here at this point. And when you think about it, how could they not confirm it at this point? I mean, basically, anybody who sees the evidence that has been put forth here, Fox News is, they're obviously recognizing it. I don't think they would have just slapped this in here in that digital article. They did that for a reason. Because the Pentagon obviously would have read that article and they would have saw this picture and they know about it because they received that letter. They have never responded to it. All right, so they're going to have to acknowledge it, but they're just not going to admit to anything else. That's what I think is going to happen. And it might start with this. It might start with the Vegas alien stuff. They're going to have to. I mean, how could anyone deny it? I mean, if this is something that gets brought up eventually in one of these hearings, Perhaps. I mean, you bring Scott Roeder and you have him testify before one of these House committees, then it's over. And then you bring the Pentagon, somebody from the Pentagon, in and says, well, what about this? And then they're going to have to provide some sort of a commentary. And they're not going to be able to do what they just did a few days ago with John Kozlowski and make these presentations and say, oh, yeah, this could have been a balloon that was floating out there over Mount Etna, through that hot ash over the volcano. It really was parallax issues with, it really wasn't in the hot ash. It wasn't in that plume of smoke. No, it was, that's just an illusion. And this is the same kind of stuff that they did with Project Blue Book. And it's going to end up, it's going to end up in the same way as Project Blue Book. It's going to get dismantled at some point. There's absolutely no point in doing this. It doesn't make any sense. We're not going to get the truth through Arrow. We're going to get stuff like this. We're going to get explanations for some of them, and for the rest of them to say, yeah, we don't have explanations for the rest of the stuff yet, but we're working on it, and that's all you're ever going to get. They're never going to tell you the truth about this situation through Arrow. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, let's just look at some of them cases from the other day. This was, I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. This is actually from Arrow's website, and this is some of the things they were talking about during the hearing when John Kozlowski met in that Senate hearing. And he talked about this Puerto Rico object. A lot of us are aware of this Puerto Rico video that showed this weird object flying around over this military base, and then it goes out over the ocean, and it splits into two objects, and then it goes under the water, apparently. But, of course, Kozlowski and Arrow, they have explanations for this, and we're just expected to walk away believing them. But we really, this is all we get from them. I mean, they're just giving their opinion. I think Arrow is under orders to come up with some excuses for some of these things, and there's things that explain it as in prosaic terms, and that's what you're getting here. I mean, let's look at this. The Puerto Rico object. It says here, on April 26, 2013, a United States Customs and Border Protection aircraft recorded infrared video of potential unidentified anomalous phenomenon over Puerto Rico's Rafael Hernandez Airport. The video appears to show an object traveling at high speed, splitting into two objects, and entering and exiting the water. The object was deemed anomalous based on these initial perceptions. And then the findings. Arrow, in coordination with Intelligence Community, IC, and Science and Technology, S&T, partners, assess with high confidence, they have high confidence over this, that the UAP did not demonstrate any anomalous speeds or flight characteristics. Well, I think anyone who looks at that video could make an argument in reverse on that one, I think. Two distinct objects were airborne in proximity to each other rather than a single object splitting into two. Modeling and minimum separation vectors analysis indicates the illusion of splitting was likely due to the changing angle of sensor view, allowing only intermittent views of both objects. The perception of high speed was attributed to motion parallax. Reconstruction confirmed the objects traveled at wind speed in a straight line over land during the entire observation period, never entering the water. So they're saying, even though it looks like they entered the water in the video, they're saying they never entered the water according to them. And here's the thing. They might be right about this. I don't know, but I don't know how you could say this with high confidence. I just don't know how you could. I mean, there's just not enough information in that video to make that kind of assertion. But I think, again, they're under orders to come up with these kind of prosaic answers. That's the whole issue here, and we're going to get more of this. They're not going to come ever. They didn't present any sort of things that were truly anomalous that they have no explanation for during that hearing. No, they didn't even go there. They didn't show you anything like that. They only show you stuff that they have created answers for, that they've manufactured explanations for. Same thing as Project Blue Book. Same thing. We're not going to get anywhere with this. And again, I think Richard Dolan is absolutely correct. They're never ever going to voluntarily disclose the truth to us. And anyway, this little piece continues. It says, analytic factors. Perception of objects fading in and out due to thermal crossover. Trajectory reconstruction shows the objects traveled southwest in a straight line at a consistent speed of 3.6 meters per second while slowly descending to 200 meters. Winds were 7 knots out of the east-northeast. Cloud cover was approximately 50% with scattered clouds at 914 meters or 3,000 feet. And that's basically your I mean, I can't walk away with high confidence after reading this that's the explanation, that this provides the end-all explanation for the Puerto Rico object. I just can't. I just don't see how anybody could. And then they talk about the GoFast, the most probably the more most famous one that they talked about the other day. It says here, the event in January 2015, United States Navy aircraft recorded an object appearing to travel at high speeds close to the ocean surface off of Florida's east coast. That says the findings, following in-depth computational analysis of Navy aircraft's flight characteristics and sensor readings, Arrow, in coordination with S&T partners, assesses with high confidence again, there you go again, the UAP did not demonstrate any anomalous speeds or flight characteristics. Now, this was an interesting one because they didn't even tell you what it was, though. They still have no idea what it was. Right? But okay, well, let's see what else they say. The UAP's altitude is assessed with high confidence as approximately 13,000 feet above sea level at a calculated velocity of approximately 45 miles per hour and 39 knots. Analysis of contemporaneous weather patterns in the area at the time of event indicates winds were approximately 60 knots at 13,000 feet. And then it goes on to say, analysis of its flight path in relation to the Navy aircraft revealed the object maintained a relatively straight, slightly rising trajectory with a slow curving descent near the end of the analyzed video. High confidence analysis of the UAP's exact position was not possible given a lack of precise positional data from the observing naval aircraft. Now, I find that interesting. They're saying high confidence analysis of its exact position was not possible, but just above there it says the UAP's altitude is assessed with high confidence. So which one is it? Which one is it? Again, this is a dog and pony show for the public. That's all it is, to make us go away. The guy from the Arrow office, he was in front of the Senate the other day in the Senate hearing, and yeah, he said they had explanations, so it's all figured out now. Nothing to worry about. I guess we can go home and go to bed. And then finally, he talked about this one, the Mount Etna object. And this was an event in 2018, a U.S. UAV flying over the, that's an unmanned aerial vehicle, flying over the Mediterranean Sea, observed an eruption by Italy's Mount Etna, capturing video of a potential UAP seemingly passing through the volcano's plume with no apparent impact to its performance, altitude, and bearing. And then the findings, Arrow, in coordination with the intelligence community and S&T partners, assesses with moderate, this isn't high confidence, this is only moderate confidence. Moderate confidence that the object was a balloon drifting with the wind approximately 170 kilometers from the volcano. And then the analytic factors. Coordinated analysis employed full motion video analysis software, 3D modeling, pixel examination, as well as novel speed and distance calculation techniques to reach this conclusion. The estimated distance between the UAP and the UAV is based on weather analysis of the cloud deck and wind speeds. Arrow and its partners disproved the object flew through the ash plume by conducting an analysis of the luminosity of the object's pixels in relation to a sample range of pixels immediately around it. To validate the estimated UAP speed and bearing, 3D modeling and wind calculations were used to estimate the UAP's location when the UAV operator lost sight of it. Subsequent video analysis found faint tones of the UAP where the modeling assessed it would traverse, further validating the findings. Again, for this one, they're only moderately confident. This is not an explanation for these. This is not end-all explanations for these things. But that's what they're doing. They're presenting them as such, and they expect now people in Congress. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, we're satisfied. See you next time. That's how the reaction is, as far as I could see. This is nonsense. It's the same thing. We've seen this movie before. If you knew the history behind the government and the UFO cover-up and Project Blue Book, you would recognize that what is happening here now is something that happened in the past, and I'm going to bring that up next here. Yes. Now, of course, most famous case that really made Blue Book look really terrible was the swamp gas case from 1966 in Michigan. And here's an article from the Bentley Historical Library, and I'm just going to go through some of this article. This is by Lara Zeeland, and of course I will leave a link for this as well as everything else that I'm talking about here today, so you can check all these things out for yourself. It says here, Frank Manor was spending a quiet night at home with his wife and teenaged son, Ronald. Ronald on the evening of March 20th, 1966. All was peaceful at their farmhouse just northwest of Dexter, Michigan, until around 8:30 p.m. That's when they saw the lights. Something unusual was in the sky outside their farmhouse. They watched from their windows as a strange object appeared to land on their property. Then Frank and Ronald dashed from the house to investigate. The object hovered above a nearby marshy area, pulsating red and green lights. Frank and Ronald described it as a large, brown, and sphere-shaped with a quilted pattern on its surface. At one point, the object's lights went out and it disappeared, only to reappear seconds later, about 500 yards away. They then heard a sharp sound, like a rifle bullet ricocheting off an object. The strange craft lifted into the air, paused directly above them, and disappeared. The Manners phoned law enforcement to explain what they'd witnessed. Instead of being laughed at, their report was taken seriously. Police officers on patrol that evening had seen something similar. Washtenaw County Sheriff's Corporal David Severance even drew a picture of it based on witnesses' descriptions. What's more, sightings had been happening all week. The previous Monday, police on patrol in Lima Township, southwest of Dexter, had witnessed 4 lights flying with great speed and amazing maneuverability in the early morning hours. One officer even attempted to take photos. And there is a drawing of this craft by one of the police officers. Very interesting. The Officer David Severance drawing of a UFO above Dexter Township in 1966. Now you see that? It looks like your classic kind of UFO with this weird quilting on it, on the surface of it. Anyway, the article continues. It says, the day after the incident at the Manor Farm, lights were reported about 60 miles southwest of Dexter at Hillsdale College. In this case, several undergraduate women saw lights outside their dorm windows. They phoned William Van Horn, the Hillsdale County Civil Defense Director, who arrived with a patrol car and also saw the lights firsthand. The incidents were so widespread and witnesses were so credible that senators, governors, law enforcement, and researchers would become involved trying to understand what was happening. Today, numerous collections at the Bentley document much of this activity, from archived newspapers to governor's papers to faculty correspondence and more. What happened in spring of 1966 in Michigan? It may be impossible to know, but a dive into archived materials certainly reveals what happened next. And then it goes on to say here, Washtenaw County Sheriff Douglas Harvey knew the Manners and had visited them on the night of March 20th. He found their testimony to be credible and took their account seriously. These people have seen something, Harvey said, refuting rumors that the family was seeking publicity or was somehow deranged. Harvey's officers were among those who had also witnessed the unexplained lights. I know my men and I trust their reports, Harvey told the Ann Arbor News on March 22nd. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that they have seen something aloft. Harvey asked for help investigating the incidents from several federal agencies, but he was repeatedly ignored. Desperate, he reached out to Weston Vivian, his congressional representative. Vivian took Harvey's request seriously. This may have been motivated in part by his constituents' concerns about UFOs. A file in his collection contains letters from citizens predating the 1966 incident, asking for information and relaying worries about UFOs. More public letters conveying UFO concerns and predating the 1966 incident can be found in the collections of other politicians. And Vivian pulled enough strings to get the United States Air Force to send out an investigator, J. Allen Hynek, Ph.D., an astrophysicist from Northwestern University. But soon Hynek's presence would create more problems than it would solve. Hynek was a respected academic who had worked at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory during World War II, then as a full professor in physics and astronomy at Ohio State University. He eventually left Ohio State to conduct research at the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, where he worked on a United States satellite program in the late 1950s. When the program ended, he returned to teaching at Northwestern University, where he chaired the astronomy department. He did all this while consulting on the side of the United States Air Force about UFOs, and beginning in the late 1940s, Hynek was asked to advise the military on Project Sign, an investigation into a rash of reports about strange objects in the sky. Project Sign eventually morphed into Project Blue Book in 1952. Hynek initially approached the UFO reports with a great deal of skepticism. After all, they were reports. Hynek was largely behind a desk, reading accounts from people he hadn't met and from places he'd never been. Things began to change when Hynek went into the field, visiting with people making the claims and hearing them firsthand. The witnesses I interviewed could have been lying, could have been insane, or could have been hallucinating collectively, but I do not think so, he wrote in the Hynek UFO report in 1977. Hynek would go on to write exhaustively about UFOs, even creating a classification system for alien encounters, which is the close encounters of the first, second, and third kind. But when he arrived in Washtenaw County on March 23, 1966, he couldn't see much evidence that anything was awry. In fact, he devised a tidy explanation for all of it. Now, let me just stop there for a second. Yeah, so Hynek shows up, but Hynek was working for Project Blue Book at the time. Of course, he went on to regret what happened next. Of course, as a lot of us know this story, right? This is the swamp gas story. But he's under pressure to come up with answers. So on behalf of the military, on behalf of the Air Force, that's what he was doing. So he had to come up with some sort of an explanation that just poo-poos the whole thing away. And that's what he did. And he later went on to regret it. It says here, on March 25th, 1966, Hynek gave a press conference where he said that the incidents at the Manor Farm and Hillsdale College were the result of rotting vegetation in lowland areas. The vegetation created gases that were trapped in winter. During the spring thaw, the gases were released. This so-called swamp gas phenomenon could cause lights and even sound. Hynek called it highly localized. A dismal swamp is a most unlikely place for a visit from outer space, Hynek said at the press conference. Boy, I'll tell you what, hearing comments like that, I know you can understand why the people there are really angry about this swamp gas explanation, especially when you have this, it's making a fool out of the people. Why would aliens visit a swamp? If aliens are outer space, go to a swamp. Boy, I mean, I imagine Hynek must have been under a lot of pressure at that moment to just come up with any sort of explanation. Furthermore, Hynek asserted that the strange photos taken by a police officer were nothing more than trails made as a result of a camera time exposure of the rising crescent moon and the planet Venus. The public wasn't buying it. Among the skeptics were Sheriff Harvey, who continued to support his patrol officers and the Manners. With all due respect to Dr. Hynek, I'm not ready to accept this weak excuse of gas from marshes, he told reporters. Hynek's explanations were so unsatisfying to the public that pressure mounted for a deeper investigation. And Congressman Vivian continued to put pressure on the Air Force for more investigative resources, and he wasn't alone. Representative Gerald Ford from Michigan also became involved, requesting a full congressional inquiry about the UFO reports. The Air Force caved under pressure. On April 6, 1966, they announced that they would convene a group of scientific observers to further delve into recent sightings. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of the article, but that was the beginning of that was the birth of the Condon Committee, which ended this whole thing as far as the government was concerned in 1969. When they came out, even though they didn't have explanations for all these UFOs, Condon, who didn't like this subject, thought it was silly, and apparently the Air Force knew that Condon thought it was silly, and they let him do this study, let him head this study. He wrote the final analysis for that Condon report, and basically stating there's no reason to continue scientific study of UFOs. So then Blue Book got closed, and I think something similar is probably going to happen with Arrow very soon. There's no need to have Arrow anymore. We're never ever going to get anywhere with Arrow. Let me tell you, it's useless. It's absolutely, when you really think about what's happening here. And I talked about it the other day. Again, Congress creates the Arrow. Okay, they create it. It becomes a law. Basically, you have this all-domain anomaly resolution office, but the Pentagon's in charge of it. The Pentagon, which doesn't want to talk about this stuff in the first place, you put them in charge of it. So we're never going to get anywhere with it. It doesn't make any sense. But it's just a dog and pony show. That's all we're getting from this, and that's all we're ever going to get from it. We're never going to get anything from them, right? Like when I was talking recently, I said, that one guy that Air Force official who was recently talking about this, they're instead of just lying about it, why don't they just no comment? That would be better. Just no comment. When you're brought up about UFOs, at least this way, because we know that you're lying, it's best that you just say no comment. Right? Because then I can handle that better. It's, okay, they can't talk about it. That makes, okay, I could deal with that a little bit better than, we don't have any evidence. Because you do have the evidence. I sent it to you personally. I sent you some evidence personally, and I know you got a lot more hidden away. There is a non-human intelligence on this earth. There's just no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And the government continues to lie about it, quadrupling down on it. They just keep doing it, and it's never going to stop. And Arrow is nothing, no different than Blue Book. We're never going to get anything with this. They're never going to come forward and say, yes, here's something that's truly anomalous, and it might be extraterrestrial. You're never going to get something like that from Arrow. You're never going to get it. So I think the best we could hope for is like what Richard Dolan said, is that I imagine that there will not be a disclosure so much as an eventual confirmation. That's probably the best we're going to get in the near future. Maybe years, decades, 100 years down the road or something. When maybe we'll get more. But I think in the near future, the best we're going to get is a confirmation. Yeah, there's something there. We can't say much more than that. No more comments. And that's probably it. Well, they'll confirm it that way at some point, and then just not say anything ever publicly about it. The public will just be aware that the government's aware of this, but that they can't talk about it for whatever reason. And I have talked about that possibility before in the past, but I think that's where we're heading, and I think that's Dolan seeing it that way right now, and I cannot disagree with him on that, because it makes perfect sense to me, and I think that's the way we're heading on this. I think we're going to get a confirmation at some point, and that's the best we're going to get. They're not going to talk at all about anything else. The confirmation will be in itself, though, a disclosure in a way. But the reality is that anybody who would look at the evidence that is out there right now, the evidence that we've been talking about on the show, which I'm very, very sick of talking about, by the way, if you look at that and you absorb the totality of it, you're going to walk away realizing, oh yes, okay, it's absolutely real. There is something here after all, if you didn't know it before. And the Pentagon knows that there's people out there right now that know this, that are walking around with this knowledge, and they understand. And so they know it, we know it, and we know that they're lying, and they're just not going to admit to it. So they should just. I think it's an insult to our intelligence. Like the next day after that hearing, to have somebody from the Pentagon come out and say they have absolutely no evidence, because you're lying to us, and we all know it. We all know it. No comment would work better, or an acknowledgement, just like Richard Dolan says, just provide an acknowledgement. Yes, there's aliens were there in that video, and there's obviously something was there that's not human. Look, there's nothing we can do about it. We have nothing else we could say right now at this time, so no more comment. Do something like that and then move on. That's probably, at the best we'll get. The best we'll get. We should get something. We're going to have to get something at some point. It's coming. Sooner rather than later, too. I mean, this is not going to sit around for. I'm not going to, for one thing, I'm not just going to hang around for the next 5 years talking like this. I'm just going to keep pushing this till it gets up there, till somebody starts listening, until somebody tries to provide an answer or a response of some type. So I'm never giving up, and I don't think anybody else should give up either. But anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.